Hello, and welcome to the Kaizen Academy podcast. I'm Justin, and I'm here with my co-host Cal. It's been a while, Cal, since we'd last done
Yeah,
our podcast. How have you been?
so long. I've been good. I've been good. I was kind of keen just to kind of be back on this. It was kind of fun, you know.
Mm.
When we got into the rhythm of doing these episodes, it was fun. So yeah, kind of missed it a bit. Even though it's a bit nerve wracking sometimes, I'm like, oh man, you know, kind of miss going back to the library and doing the whole podcasting thing. But you know, we make do. It's like of our circumstances. So here we are. At
Yeah.
home.
So just for context, we normally record at our local library. They've got like a very nice recording studio and everything, but unfortunately that's closed at the moment because of the pandemic. So we're gonna give online recording a try. And today we're going to be talking about how to prepare for your HSC maths exams. The year 12s this year have about a month left before they've got their exams. So we're just going to kind of run through like tips of like what you should be doing like now, what you should be doing the night before, and what you should be doing on the day.
Mm.
So let's set like a scenario of, okay, we've got a student, let's say they're unprepared. They've got 1 month left, and they have
Ah,
not been studying like for maths. Or what do you reckon
okay.
they should do?
Wow. I think a month left is never too late. I think the fact that we've already set the scenario with, hey, you still got a month. I think the first thing is that student shouldn't think that it's ever too late. You know what I mean? Like this is actually perfect timing. Like if you start now, there is no like loss in like, oh, you know, I could have passed or something. Like no, like you will pass if you start studying now. You will do perfectly fine. I think if you put in the effort now. So just sometimes like a lot of students are just like, oh, you know, I didn't start early enough, and then they kind of just abandon it, don't start at all. It's like, no, no, you need to start now. And I think that doesn't even apply to just a month. I think even if it's 2 weeks out, right, and you're like, oh, I didn't start last month. It's like, no, like 2 weeks, you still got heaps of time. Like you need to put in that effort. You need to get started now. So I think just switching gears and making sure you start it. I think that's probably a big hurdle that a lot of students are getting over. But just know it's never too late, you know, until literally the night before or a few days before. Yeah, it can be quite late. But in our scenario so far, I think a lot of students seem to put too much pressure on themselves. Like, oh, I should have started earlier. I should have started earlier. But you know, sometimes you just got to let go of that idea and just get started wherever you are at whatever point you are in your preparation. And then
Yeah,
once you get
because
started
like
though, yeah. Sorry.
yeah, because if you study very efficiently, like it's
Mm.
surprising like how much content you can cover like within like a few
Mm.
weeks, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah, like if you start early and you know that you have so much time, you're probably going to procrastinate a little bit more. You're probably going to be studying much more inefficiently, and then you're going to arrive at the same amount anyways. So, yeah, nothing wrong with being a month out and not having started your studies yet, right? So I think just get rid of that stigma. You can start now. You're perfectly fine, but just get
It's
started.
not too late. Just get started,
Yeah,
get going.
yeah. But if I want to get started, Justin, what should we actually do though, Eric?
What should
I
we
guess, I
do?
guess that's the next question. With maths.
Um, with math specifically, my advice to students who are behind, and to be honest, even if you're not behind, I think the way you study in the last few weeks leading up to the exam are the same. And I think we all know it's to do past papers, right? Because
Yeah,
your textbook questions, there's a bit of a difference between the way they're worded,
yeah,
just the context is different. So you want to
yeah,
study as directly as possible. So if you're going to be doing an exam, you should be practicing exams leading up
yeah.
to it.
Yeah, there's always such a disconnect between those textbook questions. It's like no matter how hard those textbook questions get, it's never exam style, right?
Hmm.
But yeah, definitely do your past papers. I think that's the one thing you should be doing.
Do your past papers, and we know it's like difficult because recently this is the first year that we're using the new syllabus um, in the HSC. so there aren't that many past papers going around with all of these new topics and stuff. And like some of your old papers, there's old topics that you don't actually really need anymore.
Yeah.
But like if you're at a complete loss, NISA has provided like a sample paper for 2 unit, 3 unit, 4 unit, for every like math subject essentially. So that's probably priority number one. Do that paper and see how you go.
No, that's a good point. I think the fact that you have so little papers, you should be making the most of each paper, right? Instead of just kind of like blindly going through them. But the thing is, I think beyond that, when you guys are doing your past papers, I think it should be like good practice for you to do these papers in some kind of exam condition or the best that you can do at home. Like, I know you can't really replicate that at home, but I think at least no music. At least get away from your phone. You know, take away those distractions and try your best to make it so that you have some kind of pressure, because a lot of times it doesn't seem like students have issues or difficulties doing these questions or performing these exams. It's really performing these exams in this time slot with this pressure, with this stress added on top, carrying all that, juggling all that. I think a student who does well, most students who do well, they manage to find a balance, or they manage to kind of juggle all those things very effectively. And I think, yeah, just a lot of students kind of overlook that one aspect. They know, they understand things so well, and then go into the exam, and then things start to blank out, and then you see yourself make silly mistakes, and these things start to arise because of all the pressure and how you're not used to all that pressure. So I think try your best to, you know, make the most of these papers, because you don't have a lot. And when we say make the most of it, I think is, I guess, practice it effectively, right? Make sure you give yourself the 2 hours. Make sure you close all books. You're not looking at any of that other stuff. Because imagine
Exactly.
you have
I think that's a big problem that a lot of students tend to do. It's when they're actually doing their papers. Once they get stuck on a question, they'll immediately look at the solutions and like
so
try to do
bad.
it.
Yeah.
It's like, don't do that.
Yeah.
Go through the entire paper in like proper exam conditions and then review it afterwards, because it's very easy to trick yourself into thinking that you actually know how to do a question when you look at the solutions. But it's surprising how many times like you think you know it, but when it actually comes to doing it in an exam condition, you completely forget.
No, that's a good point. I think we'll touch on this later as well, but I think you shouldn't train yourself to be doing, like, I think when you're doing that, when you do that so often, you train yourself to think that, oh, when you get stuck, there's gonna be a helping hand, and then in the exam you get stuck, and then there's no helping hand, and then the panic starts to kick in. You're like, wait a second, I'm not used to this. I'm not used to having no help, right? So that's a really good point. I think that's a really good point. Like, oh God, please, you know, like when you do these past papers, you need to treat it like exactly how the exam would play out, the same environment or as close to that environment as possible. That's a good point.
And I guess also when you are redoing your exams, I think a common like mistake as well is when students just blast through exam after exam without sitting there and actually looking at their mistakes, right? Because that's honestly where the gold mine is of where like you can improve, like where you're making mistakes. After you do every exam, you should sit down and properly understand every single question that you got wrong, and don't move on until you've actually like, okay, I properly understand this, because there's no point doing exam after exam after exam and getting the same types of questions right and getting the same types of questions wrong. Like, of course, there's value in like redoing questions that you already know, just to like keep it fresh, practice that skill. But it's at this point, you've got 1 month left. It's far more efficient to be working on your mistakes than working on your strengths.
Yeah, right. That comes back to what we're saying, right? Like, we have a month. It's not a lot of time, but if you work efficiently, it's heaps of time, right? And the fact that you don't have a lot of papers to work with. You can't just blast through 5 papers. Say you use those 5 papers, and what those 5 papers could have taught you, you use it so inefficiently. Now they're gone. And now what, right? You don't really have the luxury of just plowing through more past papers. You only have a few to make the most out of. And I think that's really good. I think that suggestion was was so foreign to me at first. It's something that I've never thought about, like doing a past paper and then redoing, but only redoing the ones that you've gotten wrong. And I'm not gonna lie, like at first it was very uncomfortable. I never really liked. I was very much the student that would plow through past papers, but we had the luxury of like having literally hundreds of past papers to go through, so I guess it wasn't too big of an issue. But I've come to just realize how much more effective, how much quicker like a lot of our students were able to pick up on things just because they were redoing these exams, but only redoing like the ones that they've gotten wrong. And yeah, I think I'm a big believer. I'm sold. I think it's awesome. Yeah. But yeah, so I guess redoing these past papers, make sure you redo it effectively. You know, you don't have a lot. And make sure you put yourself under those exam conditions. Please, please, please don't. No music, right? I know you like to have music to kind of have time fly by and stuff like that, but yeah, no distractions, you know what I mean? Because we all love to multitask as well. Yeah.
Completely focused on the exam.
Yeah. If you get stuck, no looking at solutions, no looking at notes. You get stuck, you need to learn how to handle being stuck in an exam, right? Gosh, and that's probably one of the biggest things as well, right? When you sit in an exam, which we'll discuss later. But yeah, a month out, start working on your past papers, you know? It's kind of nice sometimes, don't you think, Justin? Like, it's kind of nice, like, in these exam, like, say, with this month forward, I feel like you only have one goal, and that is to do past papers. I feel like your life simplifies down a little bit. And it's like, oh, you know, I just need to wake up, do past papers. There's no complexity in it. It's just like,
you don't need to worry about going to school, doing like, exactly. Okay, I've got to like assign this assignment or whatever.
Yeah.
You've got one goal.
No homework.
Do all your past papers.
Right. Oh, that's the other thing. I think maybe it's not too big of an issue now, but I think a lot of times when you prepare, because I guess a month out, what you're doing a lot is you're preparing. A big thing is just like auditing all of the work that you actually have, just so you don't let things fall through the cracks. I know teachers, they love to dump a lot of work onto you, but I think, you know, making sure that all of that is accounted for and making sure that you hold yourself accountable to finish all of that stuff. I think there are a lot of students that just kind of, get all this work, and then when you start working through things, you work through them without understanding how much you have to complete. So then you might work through them at a slower pace. You might not get to all of them. So I think before you even get started, just spending a bit of time like going through your books, going through all the loose sheets that your teachers handed out, you know, making sure that everything's accounted for, and then seeing, okay, I have like these 8 past papers, 5 worksheets that I've got to do over the next few weeks. And that really helps. I think it makes planning a little easier, and it makes sure that like, it gives you a bit of confidence as well, right? I think if you plan all of that out and then you finish all of it, you're like, I'm satisfied. I've done all that I could. I should be confident in myself moving forward. But yeah, just kind of auditing.
I think I personally would have like really benefited from that advice when I was in the HSC, because I was very haphazard with my preparation. It's like, I just wake up like, okay, today what am I going to do? Well, I don't know. I'm just going to do these past papers, and not having a proper plan, not having a proper audit of all of my resources. Yeah. It was very anxiety inducing, one. Yeah. Because like, you just feel like I should be doing more. Like, I'm not sure what I should be doing right now exactly. And also things like fall through the cracks, right? You miss like, okay, damn, it turns out because I've been so haphazard with my planning, I've only done 2 past papers for this subject, whereas I've done 10 for this other one. And so things aren't very well balanced out. So I think students would really benefit. And I've gotten all of my students that I tutor to do this for me. And it's to write out what you're going to be studying every single day up until your HSC, and even during your HSC. So like, all right, today I'm going to do 1 English past paper, 1 maths past paper, like whatever you like. Okay, Saturday I've got a bit more time. Maybe I don't know. Like, it doesn't really matter as long as you've got a plan. You know what you're moving towards, and like, okay, you know if you're falling behind, or okay, you're making good pace, you can like relax a little bit.
No, for sure. Yeah. Like, what's the first exam? What needs to be weighted first? Okay, now that the first exam's over, I have a few days for the next one. You know, you need to kind of take a step back, and see things from a distance, just so you can take it all in. You know, okay, I have this many days until this one, so on and so forth. I think that planning is so important. And like you were saying, I think that's such an underrated thing. Like the anxiety of not knowing you've done enough, right? If you've audited everything, if you know exactly what you need to do, and you end up finishing, even if it is just like, imagine you audit things and you only have like a few things to do, and you finish those few things, you know for sure you've done everything that you could, right? And I think that in itself, building confidence, is low key one of the biggest things in the exams. Like I think one of the biggest things that helped me was just knowing that I was confident. Yeah, I guess I was one of the students. I studied really early on back in high school, so I was always prepared. But then I feel like throughout my university years as well, having like a confidence, and sometimes even a pseudo confidence, even though it's like I'm not really confident, just having a confidence, it's like it helps. Like it helps you pull out stuff. You know, it helps you BS a lot easier. When I feel like when you're insecure, you can't. Oh, is this the answer? Is this the answer? But like when I was like pseudo confident in my uni exams, bro, straight up, I was like, this is the answer. That's the answer. Even though if I didn't know it was wrong, right or wrong, I still ended up doing much better than if I was like insecure and like second guessing and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Which is crazy. Confidence, guys, so important. But yeah.
Yeah, having that like mindset of like, okay, like this is fine. Like you just like, yeah, I'm doing fine. Like I know how to do this. Genuinely really helps when you're doing exam.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, and those things that we've just mentioned, you want to study so that you contribute to your own confidence, right? You want to make sure you walk in best foot forward and everything like that. I was so fixated on being confident. Like every time I had an exam, I know this is silly. I was very young back then, but every time I had an exam, I would get up early, I would shower, I would make myself physically feel confident. I would be like best dressed, straight up my tie, you know what I mean? Like full tuck my shirt in, my clothes would be ironed. Like I would have my expensive cologne that I got for my birthday last year, something like that. I would be wearing all of that, hair full done properly. I would go into the exam, and I feel like a lot of those other aspects, I was just trying to like squeeze out any other confidence that I could get into myself. You know what I mean? Like going in with the best mindset possible. Like you can't
Just
go
ready
in
for war.
Yeah, exactly. No, seriously. You can't go in like be defeated at the front door. You know, you can't be like that. Because the second you buckle, you're down the hill. It's like, oh, bro, you're done, mate. You're done. But like, if you're confident,
It's like calculating, how many marks do I need to pass?
exactly. That's a defeating type. Like, that's for losers. You know what I mean? Like, we ain't losers out
Bad
here.
mentality.
You wanna make sure.
Unhealthy mentality.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I feel like if you're doing that mid exam, I think it's funny to talk about. Definitely really funny to talk about. Like, oh yeah, bro.
Because we've all experienced it.
Yeah, but we have never. I don't think anyone has been like, yeah, that's an effective use of my time in exam. But calculating how many marks I got and stuff like that. Like, if you're doing that, I think that's the worst thing ever. Like, please, because at the end of the day, you could at least be reading something and something could hit you. You know what I mean? Click, and like in your exam, time's so precious. You don't want to be wasting like thinking about all those random things, being insecure about failing this or failing that. It's you're in the exam. Other things don't matter at that point in time. You need to focus on what you have, I guess. But yeah.
And just one final point on this like topic of preparing like the weeks leading up to the exam. This is very specifically to like kind of like my past self or like students that are similar to me, and it's people who tend to assign themselves too much work and end up not doing any of it, right? And I've suffered from this like problem like for like a long time, and only in the past few years I've finally gotten a grip of how to manage it properly. And it's very simple. It's just, if you aren't able to do the amount of work that you set yourself next time for like tomorrow, reduce the amount of work until like, okay, this is actually manageable. I'm actually going to do this. Because it's too many times where I've been like, okay, today I didn't do my past paper. That means tomorrow I have to do 2 past papers to catch up. And it's a never-ending cycle of like, okay, tomorrow I end up not doing anything as well. So if you miss today's work, don't like assign more work for tomorrow. You should assign less work for tomorrow so that you actually get it done. And okay, today I've hit 1 past paper and I still feel okay. Tomorrow, okay, let's try increase the amount. that I'm going to do. I'm going to try to do 2 past papers. But if I don't,
Yeah.
I'm going to move back to 1, right? You want a good, consistent pace rather than just
Mm.
like kidding yourself of like, oh yeah, don't worry. On the weekend, I'll finish 10 past papers easy because I've got like all the time in the world. That's a very bad path to be following, at least for people that are similar to me, I guess.
No, I feel a bit attacked because I feel like I'm still in that mentality. But that's really, I think that's a really cool. I like how you brought that up with that actual solution, because I'm gonna try that. Because I've definitely been in that like, oh, I didn't finish this work today. Oh, I guess my tomorrow self will be punished for that, and he will have to do double the amount of work, and it just never works out. And then it's like a negative feedback loop. You just end up digging yourself deeper and deeper. And I was like, oh, I'm never out of this whole debt that I'm out of work that I have to finish. But yeah,
You just
I
got to
like that.
cop
Doing
the
less.
L and like reset.
Yeah, we always talk about copping the L. I think that's important, man. Copping the
It's
L
very
is a
important.
big part of life. Yeah, it's a big part of life. But-
Okay, and just to summarize this section, I guess, so like, okay, for students, all students really preparing to enter the HSC 1 month from now, specifically preparing for the maths exam and even like all your subjects really, past papers, number 1, you want to be very direct with your practice. Number 2, don't waste your past papers. Don't just blast through them. After you've done it in a proper exam setting, or like as close as possible that you can make for yourself, go through all the questions that you've done wrong, redo them again in exam conditions if possible,
yeah.
until you completely understand them. What else did we say?
Bro, I think
Have a
that's pretty much
schedule.
it. Oh, right,
Have a schedule
yeah.
every single day.
Audit
Plan out
your work.
exactly what you're going to be doing every single day, all the way
Yes.
up to your HC and even during your HC.
Yes.
And that schedule is flexible, right? And don't overload yourself if you're not actually going to do the work. Like we
Remember,
were
if you
just
miss
saying.
something out, right? Yeah. Deload. Keep deloading until you find your entry point. It's almost like your way in, and then once you start doing work, you'll find out you probably can start ramping things up, right? Like it's like a bit of momentum. It's like, okay, I'm getting into the rhythm of things, but it's hard to get into the rhythm of things when your first day you've assigned yourself like 100 past papers. It's a bit unrealistic. So be kind to yourself, and you'll be surprised as to how far you'll get with your studies in this 1 month. Doesn't seem like a lot. Trust me, you're not that far behind. Yeah. You're not behind at all, actually, if you do your work efficiently. But yeah, 1 month out. All right, we got our plan.
All right.
What's next?
And let's talk about a spicy one next. It's
Oh,
the day
far out.
before your exam. The day before your exam, what do you do? Any
Oh.
opening thoughts on this, Cal?
I had a teacher. I had a tutor teacher when I was in year 11, and he used to tell me how. I mean, he was a great student. He was, selective school, super, super smart, unbelievably smart. He's a teacher now as well, and he's one of the reasons why. Just quick shout out to him, like genuinely one of the biggest reasons why I'm teaching right now, or like I do this in my spare time or my like outside of work time kind of thing. Like he's always been the one where it's like he's always like telling me just do teaching at uni, like just go do education or something. I'm like, nah, I'm serious. But I'll always try. Like I feel like every time I teach because I remember seeing how much he was able to help me. But I remember when he spoke to me, a lot of things that he said to me very resonated really like a lot with me. And one of the things I remember him telling me was just like he would study early enough to the point where before an exam he's always playing games, and he'd always kill it. So if it's a day out, he's always resting. There's no, and this is not a luxury that every student has. I totally get it, but I think it is definitely a winning combination. If you are so prepared to the point where the day before you have time to rest, you should rest. You shouldn't. I think students in that bracket who are operating at that level should not be studying all the way right up to the exam. I think that day before should really be just so you could chill out, so you could just kind of take a break and let things just kind of simmer, all the things that you've learned, let it just digest in your brain and stuff like that. And like I said, not a thing that I think everyone has. I've been in all positions. Back in high school, I've been in that position where the day before I'd kind of like just disconnect. I just sleep early and find any way to rest, whatever it is. But I've also been in the position where I didn't have that luxury in uni, where it's like the day before, I'm still trying to learn through like week 5 of the 10 weeks of content. You know what I mean? Like, so I get it. It's not for everyone, but I think if that is the case for you, resting is definitely the best. Yeah. More specifically, sleep. I think sleep. Just get as much sleep.
I'm very passionate about this one. This topic of sleep.
All right, go off, King.
The sleep right before your exam. Okay, the biggest thing for me, the biggest incident for me personally was one day when I was doing a computer science exam the next day, and I felt relatively prepared. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to stay up tonight to study even more, to practice even more. And I only got 2 hours of sleep. Let me tell you, I felt more prepared than all of my friends. I did worse than all of my friends on that exam because I couldn't think properly during the exam. So now I'm like, for almost all students, there's a very specific scenario where I would say, okay, maybe like you can afford to, or you should stay up tonight to study more. But for 99% of students, getting your full 8 hours of sleep is way more important than getting a few more hours in of like extra study, because you want your brain functioning at 100% capacity when you're doing your exam, right? Yeah. And the one exception would be you literally don't know the content. So you've done no study up until this point. There isn't anything inside your head to to use in the actual exam. Then maybe you need to like feed some stuff in. Maybe that's the priority right now. But
in that scenario, it balances out. Yeah, it's like it's more worth it to actually stay up and read the few extra slides that you can manage because you literally have nothing. But unless you are that extreme case, sleep. Just go to sleep.
Vast majority of students, if you've just been like turning up to class and like listening to things here and there and doing like a little bit of study here and there, even those students go to sleep and be ready for your exam.
Yeah, no,
it's
that's
only
crazy. I feel like
rare 1 in a million that you're like, okay, maybe you should stay up and get some more info in there.
You've looked at nothing up until this point. Okay, you don't deserve sleep. You need to look at something now. But I think the crazy thing is, what I'm noticing is just, this is all from our experience. And I know there's probably like a mad science behind it. There's probably like billions of researchers out there like, oh, sleep this, sleep that, great sleep. But I think the only time that we've learned the only time where the lesson has resonated with us is when we've actually been traumatized by not sleeping. Like, similar to, I think, in year 12, I only remember the one, I don't remember doing any of my exams, but I remember the one bad exam I had. And that one bad exam that I had was actually a 3-unit exam as well. And just that one night, something kept me up. Some stress kept me up. And that night, I remember just counting the hours down, oh, I have 6 hours of sleep now. Oh, I have 5 hours of sleep. And I was just stressing out. And that one exam was the worst exam I ever did throughout my whole year 12. And that's the only one that I remember. I only remember the worst ones. And then on top of that, same thing, in uni, there was one exam that I had, I think it was electronics or something like that. And it was by far the hardest thing I've ever done. But the crazy thing is, the night before, I don't know if it was divine intervention, I got sick and I got food poisoning, and so I was just vomiting all night. So I was supposed to study that night, stay up all night, study, because I literally knew nothing. But I ended up just getting sick, throwing up like crazy, and then I was so weak and so tired after that, I just knocked out and slept early. And guess what? I killed that exam. I did so well. What the hell? It was legit. Okay, I say I did well. I did well for my own standards. I didn't go in there and get 100, but I genuinely didn't even know if I could pass the exam. But I slept, and I went in there and I felt like I had this extra ability to critically think. I could problem solve so much better. And a lot of these questions, I knew the fundamentals, and I knew that I wasn't going to get marks for the hard questions, but I felt like I was able to tackle a lot of these questions, think about them critically, and give it at least a decent attempt to kind of get half marks here, half marks there. Ended up doing so amazing. I was just and that one moment, I was like, oh crap, this sleep is really important. This is so...
being able to think properly is amazing.
Yeah, you might have all this information in there. Yeah.
Have you ever had those exams where you were so underprepared that you were learning during the exam. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you're doing your multiple choice and like, so that's what it was. I was like,
And
gonna
then
write down this formula over here, and you
it
reuse
connects
it
to
later
another
on.
one. Yeah, you're like,
Yeah.
wait, I remember learning about that in question one, and then I could do it. I think that's a good point. Yeah, I think I was literally
So
learning through the exam.
not a good place to be in, but like it's just another argument for why you would rather have like you would rather have the ability to think more clearly than to
Yeah,
like memorize one or two more formulas. It's
yeah,
that
definitely.
you're able to like pick up information, or like things will come back from like the depths of your mind when you
Yeah,
recognize these questions.
yeah, definitely. I feel like that ability just to pull information. You have so much information, but you do yourself a disservice. Like if you don't have enough sleep, and now you can't even access all of that amazing work that you've put in. It's like, bro, come on, man. What are you doing to yourself? But I was
And I
wondering.
guess
Yeah,
go
sorry.
ahead, go ahead.
Oh, I was just
No, go
wondering,
ahead.
what if I had to cram? Is there an efficient way to cram? Because I feel like we've also crammed ourselves so many times. I don't know. I don't know if there's an efficient way to cram. I think if you start cramming, I don't know, you might be already on the
It's what
losing
we were
side.
saying before. Yeah, like
Yeah,
do your past papers. That's the most efficient way to cram.
I guess so.
Don't look at
Yeah.
your lecture slides. Don't look at your textbook. At this point, it's too late, mate. Like you need to be doing
Oh,
as many questions as
yes.
you can.
Yes, that's true. I think if you're cramming at this point a day out, you're not trying to understand big concepts, right? You're trying to, I think, just kind of mechanically learn as much as you can instead of like, oh, let me understand, you know, how this concept works. Let me understand polynomials or something. No, no. You need to mechanically know how to smash through exam questions. And I guess, yeah, doing past papers is probably the most important thing.
So the questions that like require like a very deep insight of the topic, like forget those. Like you're not at the point where you can afford to be trying to do those now. You just
Yeah.
want to be able to do the recurring questions of like just say like financial mathematics in 2 unit. It's the same thing like every single year.
Yeah.
Like it's the same format. Just learn these questions that are in every single exam that have a very standard format that don't need you to think too much. And that's what you should be doing if you're like cramming for your exam. Like last day, you've got nothing. That's what you should be doing. But don't put yourself in that position. Ideally, you've got a month.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
You've got whatever time, honestly. Just start. I think just start, man. Just get started. But I think even then, like, doing only those repetitive questions, you'd be surprised as to how many marks you can get out of that if you do those perfectly. You know what I mean? Like, and you
you're
can
gonna
do those
pass at
perfectly.
least.
Yeah, definitely. Um, Underrated. I think just a lot of students think, oh, I can't smash these hard questions. Like, you're still gonna kill it if you don't make silly mistakes on all of the questions that you can do. You know what I mean? But yeah, sleep.
And just as a final point in terms of sleep, actually, is
Yeah.
okay. How do I get to sleep? Like I'm very nervous for my
Ooh,
3 unit
yeah.
exam tomorrow.
Yeah.
These aren't magic solutions, but I have a few quick tips.
Yeah.
If you're lying in bed and you can't get to sleep within 15 minutes, get up, do something else. Don't go on something electronic. The light kind of keeps you up, and like not only that, like when you're on like electronics, like things like YouTube or like Facebook, they tend to
Yeah.
be too engaging, and you want to stay on.
Yeah.
So instead, pull out a book or something. Even just pull out your textbook. It's like super boring. Just like look over it, your eyes will glaze over and you'll get tired. Okay,
Yeah.
let me try again. If you're still like unable to sleep for another 15 minutes, get up again. But again, do something that's low intensity, low light.
Yeah. So you're saying 15 minutes. If 15 minutes doesn't work, is it basically not going to work out and you have to kind of reset and have a go again or something like that?
That's completely anecdotal. Maybe like
Ah, okay.
20 minutes, 30
Yeah.
minutes. For me personally, I don't have any evidence backing this up. I find 15 minutes to be like, if I don't sleep by then, I'm not sleeping.
You weren't going to sleep anyways.
Yeah.
Ah, that's interesting. Yeah, I think what else is there? I don't know. Sometimes I listen to like guided meditations at night, and that kind of just knocks me out. I know it's quite successful for a few people as well, just like having like listening to talk downs and stuff like that. But it's hard. Like I think when you go to bed, you've probably trained yourself to get out your phone as like a ritual almost. It's like second nature. I get in my bed, I get out my phone. It's like my happy place. Like I know that just because that's what I do so often, and it's never helped. So I think it's probably just important that you build the habit leading up to it. Like if you've built the habit of, you know, not being on your phone, getting to sleep the night before your exam might not be that big of an issue if you've been like practicing like for a long time. But you know, if you've trained yourself to get out your phone every single time, it definitely is a bit of a struggle. But yeah, guided meditations, if anyone, like just these talk downs, they just kind of, there's a lot of these on Spotify, and Spotify has like a sleep timer where you can set like, oh, after 10 minutes it just cuts out, and it'll just turn off, or after 15 minutes, however long the audio ends up being. And then this guy just kind of talks you through like, oh, you know, tense your muscles and let go, or relax your forehead muscles, and he kind of just walks you through like being mindful and all that stuff. And yeah, it works. It definitely works sometimes. So
Do you have a specific person that you like to follow for that on Spotify?
I think,
for example.
Yeah, you
I know
definitely
the
don't be
Honest
stuck
Guys
to
are quite
one.
popular.
Yeah, but I just listen to the Honest Guys. I think find the one that works for you, and then just stick with that. I think definitely.
But if you want a specific concrete one, I found Honest Guys to be quite good, and I personally use Calm quite a bit, but definitely try out different ones. But if you want concrete examples, use those two.
Yeah, Honest Guys, there's got like the sleep within 10 minutes, talk down guided meditation thing. Yeah, and they definitely work. Definitely.
Okay, and so that's about it for day before the exam. There's no special tricks. If you're cramming, just do past paper questions. Sleep is like of the utmost importance. And yeah,
It's
that's
so
about
important.
it for that one.
And I think we're trying to like, you know, we never really learnt these lessons until we failed through, like we learnt through failure, I guess, and we're just trying our best, like praying that you guys don't have to learn through failure. Yeah, just like, oh, you know, you can learn the lesson before you fail. You know, it's like you don't have to actually make the mistake, jeopardize your HSC just to learn this lesson, because we've done it. You know, it's like I have jeopardized a lot to kind of come to this conclusion. But yeah, definitely.
Okay. So final tips for day of the exam and during the exam.
Gosh. During the
So
exam.
I've got a quick
day
one
of
just
the
for
exam.
like before the exam, right before the exam. Again, it's a case of, unless you're in the 1% that has not studied at all, you shouldn't be sitting there looking through your notes to like get ready for the exam. You should just keep everything chill. I would highly recommend meditating for like 10 minutes, and again using those same examples of, you can use the Calm app, which is the one that I personally use, or you can just use the Honest Guys on Spotify, or like whatever you want. You want to be in a good, like, just mental state going into your exams. You don't want to be frantically looking over your notes, trying to just cram in one more like question or whatever.
Yeah, I think, oh god, that's so important. Stay away from people who do that as well. You know, like don't do it yourself, but also stay away from the people who do it. Like if you're
Bad
outside
vibes,
the
man.
exam room, no, 100%. Like I used to always just headphones in my own zone. I'm not listening to other people going, oh, what about this thing that I read in my textbook about this? Like, no, I don't really care. Like even if it is something, you're just gonna destroy my confidence for like this extra bit of information that I might have missed. But who cares, right? I think it does more harm than anything. Find the right vibes, you know, listen to a bit of music. I think I remember always just taking like a good 5 minutes of just deep breathing before an exam, because I knew I've had a couple like panic attacks, I guess, during exams, and I've just found how important it was to be calm going into the exam, and how easy it was to kind of like derail into a panic attack if you're not in the right mental state, if you're just frantic, if you're kind of all over the place, hyperventilating, like, oh my god. I've definitely been in that position as well. Like, so I guess I understood how important it was. So always spent 5 minutes just to myself, deep breaths, like just breathing and focusing on my breathing, and then into the exam, and then perform. It's kind of like just like the nerves before you go up for a performance. Like, same thing. You got to just calm yourself down, and then you got to perform. Go in there, do your best that you can. But yeah,
I've got a spicy
good
one for
vibes.
you.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on having caffeine before an exam? So smashing an
Yeah.
energy drink, having a lot of coffee.
Yeah.
Do you have strong feelings about that?
Man.
So to give you a bit of time to think, I don't feel strongly like either
Yeah.
way, to be honest. Like
Yeah.
if
Same.
if you're really lacking sleep, yeah, maybe it's good, but I feel like you're often quite jittery when you're on caffeine. But I don't think it makes too big of a difference. But I think if possible, probably like lay off it,
Yeah.
because it puts your mind in a different place.
Yeah.
You're just a bit more frantic, a bit more. I find myself to be a bit more anxious on caffeine.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I think the few times that I did like kind of go very close to just full panic attack, like full hyperventilating, had to go to the toilet, just like, what the hell? Like, I couldn't even breathe. My chest was tight and everything. Those times I was on a lot of caffeine. And I think the only reason why I'm so fixated with it is like sometimes I've had good performances on caffeine, so I trick myself into thinking it was because of the caffeine, and then now I'm just trying to chase it. I'm like, oh, it's because of the caffeine. Let me just drink that one more, like one Red Bull, that one V or whatever. But yeah, definitely, I think it's up to you. This is one of those things where I just, yeah, I'm quite indifferent about it, because there are definitely times where I do feel like I haven't had enough sleep, and there is the caffeine does help kind of like bring your edge back a little bit. But there's also like so many times where you've been pushed over the edge because of the caffeine. It's dangerous. Just, I think, take it with care. Be really responsible with it, and I think you should be right. I think everyone is mature enough to take it responsibly, and it's like situational based, I guess.
Okay, so any other thoughts for before your exam, before you move into like what to do in your actual maths exam specifically?
Before, I guess that's pretty much it. Like I was saying before, like I used to really make sure my mornings were like, like back in high school when I was like killing it, my mornings were like wake up, shower, full get dressed, best clothes, best outfit that I could find, best set of uniform that is. Freaking make myself a hot cup of tea. I'd be like full, really extra. Just felt like, oh my god, like spoiling myself in the morning, and making sure that like I give myself the best opportunity. Walk to school. I'd walk to school and I'd walk real slow, big meditation. You know what I mean? Like full deep breaths and everything. No listening to crazy music. Don't get amped. All calm music. But yeah, it's definitely up to anyone else. But find the things to kind of put yourself in the right mindset, whatever it is that works for you. But yeah, confidence, because I think that's the thing. It helped with my confidence, and a lot of times being confident in your own ability is so important in these exams, because you're not wasting time second guessing and stuff like that, right?
Okay, then what about, okay, in the exam now, you've got your paper in front of you. Let's go through tips for that. And I think the first thing I want to talk about is reading time. I feel that a lot of people make the mistake of trying to start doing questions like in their head. Like, okay, you look at question one, it's like, okay, that's going to be D, or like question two is going to be like C. And I think honestly, it's a poor use of your time. There's that temptation. Like teachers always say it, but it's honestly so true. Reading time, you should use it to look over your entire exam.
Yes.
You want to get a good idea of how you should be allocating your time. You want to have a good idea of what you're up against, because you don't want that like fear of like you want to know like what you're up against. Like if you don't look through your exam, you don't know what's coming, and like that little bit of like nervousness or anxiety like builds up.
Yes.
And the final thing is, and like I think it's a quite an underrated reason. When you look at a question, even just looking at it, like your brain in the background will start crunching things up, right? It will start dredging up like relevant formulas, relevant
Yeah.
information, like relevant questions that you've done before, and letting your brain
Yeah.
work in the background is really useful. Like, okay, you look at a question, like you're not quite sure immediately how to do it, but your brain is going to start like working on it. It's going to be like, okay, we've come across this similar question before, and this is all unconscious. And by the time you get to this back to this question, you're going to be a lot more ready than you were when you first looked at it. So that's why you should be like looking through the entire exam rather than trying to jump into questions straight away.
Yeah. I think this is interesting because as a high school student, I didn't jump into it, but I guess my reading pace. I feel like in reading time, there's always enough time to read through everything, and then like you still have quite a bit of time left. Um, I don't know. For me, and this might not be, this is anecdotal. This is my experience. What I've really, what I remember doing really well was just I feel like one of the advantages I had was I had a lot of pace in my exams. I do my exams very very quickly, um, and so in reading time, I definitely would read through the whole exam straight from front to back. I know every single question that I'm faced with, up against, kind of thing. But the second I'm done with that, I would pretty much start the exam. So that's the thing. I and I'm not sure if like I'm not sure if this is like the best thing that you could do for yourself, but I always felt that when I did so many of the questions in reading time, when I started, it felt like I've already had the momentum going, and like my pace would kind of build on from that. So it's like the second that they go, all right, start, I was like A B C D E F G, and then like my whole multiple choice done, and I'm just like going through things really really quickly. But I think it's the style of exam taking that I used to have. I think everyone has a different style. My style was just to go through everything as quickly as I can, and then literally redo the whole exam twice. Like completely blank mind, fresh everything, just redo the whole exam. Like once I'm done with my first pass, I would go through, put away all my booklets, and redo the questions on the question booklet as if I haven't done it before, and then kind of have almost two sets of answers to kind of cross reference. And so I guess in that regard, I always felt like I needed to do my exam very quickly. So doing the questions in reading time was really important to me. But that did not mean that I didn't read the whole exam. So I think it doesn't really take away anything that you said, in a sense where I think it's super important that you need to go from front to back. You need to know exactly how many questions you have. What are the hard ones? Keep in mind what are the hard ones. Have a good read through them. But yeah, definitely if you can squeeze in a couple questions, I wouldn't say it's not too bad, as long as you're not sacrificing your ability to read through everything.
I would 100% agree, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah, well, if you've actually looked through everything and you still have spare time, which you often do, like I think it's fine
Yeah.
to like start doing questions from that point on.
Yeah.
I personally don't do it because I just look through everything again, but I can definitely see
Yeah.
like the argument for why you would start doing it straight
Yeah.
away, but only after you've looked through everything. And I guess
Yep,
you've kind of led into like a very interesting point of doing every single question twice. Do you mind elaborating on that? On like
Yeah, I
how
think
you approach it? Because that seems like a very like powerful method, I guess.
I'm not sure if like once again it's something that I don't feel like I can prescribe to every single one of my students, because not every single one of my students has this like this. I don't know, like a lot of students, they like to take their time. That's their approach, and it's a bit jarring for me to be like, hey, you're doing your exam wrong. The way you take your exam is wrong. That's their style. They feel most comfortable like that. I shouldn't really kind of impose my own style onto them. But what I found was, for me, checking over my work is so important. Like being able to redo my exam completely was so beneficial. And like once again, it's learning through my failures, learning through all of the times that I could have gotten first, second, or third, but I didn't because silly mistakes, right? Seeing so many times like the result that I deserve slip away just because I couldn't add two numbers correctly the first time around and I didn't check my work over the second time. That was frustrating enough for me to go, all right, I need change in my life. I need to like take exams in such a way that I have time to redo it. But I think, it's nothing new. Teachers always say, check your work, check your work. But I think when I look at students checking their work, they just kind of read over their own working out. And it's like, no. When you read over your working out, you trick yourself into thinking, yeah, that's right. And then you don't get to give yourself a fresh set of eyes onto things. So what I used to do was, you do your first time round into the answer booklet. Once you're done with the answer booklet, I put that away and I redo the questions with just the question booklet, because then there's no working out on that. There's no like bias. I think that's the thing. I knew that you could be biased by your own work, so no bias there, and I'll just redo it. And the other thing was, I don't know how to like kind of articulate this, but when I redid my questions, I redid it uncomfortably slow, if you know what I mean. Like, I would do it.
You forced yourself to slow down.
Yes, like to the point where if I knew that I felt uncomfortable, I knew that I was going slow enough. Like, because you always have like this, I could do this, let me smash through this. Like, no. I had to kind of like go against that instinct. And I eventually taught myself that if I was doing a question uncomfortably slow the second time around when I was checking over my work, you're doing the right thing, right? Like, not to kind of fall into the temptation of, oh yeah, I literally just did this question half an hour ago, I can do this, and just like smash through it. It's like, no, I'm going to read this question word for word like I literally have the reading level of a kindergarten student or something like that. I would read word for word, because I think same thing. I so many times of losing marks because I didn't read fully a question or something like that. The paragraph, I missed out a couple words or something like that. That was enough to like just shake it into me. Hey, you are leaving too much on the table just by not doing it like mindfully enough or carefully enough. So yeah, read super slow, redo all the questions as if I've never done them before, and then once I'm done, like, I'd check over. Once I'm done with the question, I'll look at it and I'm like, okay, compare the answers, I'm good. On to the next one and keep going. But yeah, that was my personal exam style.
That's super interesting, because like I've got a very different exam style, but like just listening to you talk about like your version, like it seems like you catch like so many silly mistakes. Whereas I, like the way I take exams, I'm quite prone to like making silly mistakes. Like if I just make a small miscalculation somewhere, like it will just be completely missed. So the way you go through exams is speed is important the first time through. You try to do everything so that you have enough time to redo it, but at a slower pace, so that you have like two sets of answers that you can double check essentially.
Yeah. I think it's not for everyone, but even if that's not for everyone, I think when you start to check your work, don't check your work like, don't do it half-heartedly. You know what I mean? Like, checking your work you should put as much effort into that as the first attempt. You should be checking your work just as hard. The whole point of checking your work is making sure to catch those silly mistakes that you kind of carelessly made the first time around. If you carelessly check your work, you will make the same mistakes again, right? So I think just a big tip from my side is just, if you can like really put your mind, soul, body into checking your work, please do. You need to have that 100% there, I guess. But if you take it differently though, Justin, what is your style? What is your kind of your approach then?
So I tend to do like many passes on my exam, but I only go back to questions that I do wrong. So
right.
And my first pass is very quick generally. So as I'm going through my exam, if I look at a question and I don't think I can like start doing it immediately, I need to sit down and think about it. I put a mark next to it on my question paper and I immediately move on. And I go through my entire exam like that. And like that way you get all of your easy marks, the questions that like off by heart very quickly, so that you can dedicate more thinking time to questions that you actually need it for. So I come back second time around, I spend a little bit more time. I try to think through my questions, maybe give it like two minutes. And if I still can't get a grasp on it at all, I move on. I put another mark next to it. And then I go through the second pass. So I'm gradually going through all of my questions until like at the end, I only have like ones that I really struggle with. And if by that point, like if I can't get it, I'll just spend the rest of the exam doing those questions. But if it's an easy enough exam that I can get through all of my questions like that, I'll have one round where I double check everything. And the way I double check, it's not quite as rigorous as the way you do it. I feel like your way catches a lot more silly mistakes, but what I tend to try to do is arrive at the same answer, but in a different way.
Oh.
To kind of confirm it. So like if I'm doing a probability question, for example, if I have that answer, what I'll do is, okay, I'm going to try find the complement of the answer, and then I'll do 1 minus. And if I arrive at the same answer, then like, okay, I'm pretty sure this is correct. Or just say I don't know, I'm doing an optimization type question. I can't really think of an example for that actually.
Yeah. No.
But
I
like,
get you, but
just say like,
that's
I need to
interesting.
find like the X value of something.
Yeah.
I'll test like, okay, if I sub that X value in, does it actually arrive at the Y value that I'm supposed to? So I try to have creative ways to double check or confirm my answer.
Yeah.
But that's not really possible for like all types of questions. So that's where I feel like I miss out on some of the silly mistakes.
Yeah. I get you. That's interesting. So like instead of like to make sure that this answer is correct, you kind of like do everything around it. And if everything around it is correct, obviously implies it's like a second opinion that yes, your answer is correct. That's cool. That's interesting. I've never thought about it like that. Yeah, definitely not for every question, but yeah, like you brought up, like for probability, find the complement, right? Or like say, like in a continuous probability question, like do all probabilities or does it all sum to one? Or like doing those like random checks, right? Like the contextual
Exactly.
kind of checks.
That's a good one actually. Just like for like
Yeah.
probability again, if
Yeah.
all of the possibilities that I arrive at sum up to what they're supposed to, then okay,
Yeah.
this is probably a right answer.
Yeah, that's good.
So that's how I
good.
take exams.
I guess I think the thing is though, like whatever you do to allocate your time, just make sure you allocate time to check work. Like that is just as important. So I think when you go through the exam, you know, I think the big part of this is keeping an eye on the clock. Like wherever it is, the clock is in your room. I know you guys aren't allowed to have watches anymore. I used to always have. I used to be very fancy. I'd have like my cool watch and like I'd press the timer and it'd be right there and I'd just be like I'd always reference it. And I think a lot of students just forget to do that and then get caught off guard like, oh, 15 minutes left, what the hell's going on? Like just keep a close eye to the time, right? So that you can actually do the things that we're talking about, so that you can have time to check, so that you can so that you make sure you're tackling all the questions that are necessary. But the thing is, since we're talking about maths, like that's the whole point of like I remember one of these 4-unit students, one of these super smart kids back in high school, they were saying they were like, oh, 3-unit is just a game of who can get the least silly mistakes. And I think that resonated with me. That one time whoever he or she said that thing, I was just like, oh crap, it is. Like it really is when you're up competing for first, second, third in maths extension or maybe in 2-unit even, right? You're really just trying to battle who can make the least silly mistakes. That's really what a lot of these students are fighting for. And even in the HSC, so many people in 3-unit or 2-unit get 100, right? To the point where they look at you working out and they compare it. It's a very small margin, and that differentiator is just like your silly mistakes. Make sure that you put just as much effort into catching those things because they don't seem like much, but it still ends up being marks. You know what I mean? Marks are marks, and I think it's something that you can capitalize on without putting that much effort in. It's not like I'm asking you to learn. There's no conceptual like thinking. It's just do your work carefully. Just be mindful, bro. You know what I mean? So yeah, checking over your work. You know, allocate that time for yourself.
All right, awesome. I think we're coming up to time now. We've had like quite a few like interesting like points that we've brought up. I think this was a good podcast. But as always, sorry, my doorbell just rang. As always, Do you have a song recommendation for us, Cal,
Oh
to
man,
wrap up the podcast?
I remember just when we started, I realized that was what we did.
Yeah.
Oh crap! I was trying to think of it the whole time. Can you start while you give
Yeah.
one? I was like, oh yeah, I'll think of it as we talk about this. I was like, far out.
Yeah.
I can't think of it anymore.
For me, it's a song
Yeah.
called Dreams by Fleetwood Mac. It's quite an old song. It's from like the 70s. But my friend just put it on at karaoke one time, and it was so catchy. I really liked it.
Wow.
Dreams by Fleetwood Mac.
I got
Do you know
one.
it?
I got one. Oh wait, no, sorry,
Yeah.
not that song. Sorry, I just hit my own song.
Yeah, yeah.
Fleetwood Mac's a very popular. What is he, like a country indie kind of thing? Is he like kind of?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, what was it? Sorry, I didn't catch that. While I was thinking, I was in my own head.
Dreams.
Dreams. Okay.
By Fleetwood Mac.
But I did realize, I was like, oh, what have I been listening to? While finishing my thesis, I have watched the Ghibli movies over like about 50 times over. Like, I've watched like Howl's Moving Castle like 100 times. Like, it's just in the background and it's just rolling. So I've been listening to a lot of the soundtracks from those movies, just like all of those songs. And I think the one that
so good.
is really catchy is the one from My Neighbor Totoro. It's called
Yep.
It's called The Path of the Wind or something like that. But yeah, I think okay, that's definitely mine. Should check it out. Straight fire. You know what I mean? Straight flames.
So, Path of the Wind from My Neighbor Totoro. I remember you
Yes,
were humming
from
it, and I was like,
Totoro.
that's a good song, dude.
Oh yeah, I was. And you were like, is that my neighbor Totoro? I was like, damn, bro, you got a good ear, buddy. You got a good ear. It's a great song.
That's
isn't it?
awesome.
It's like, fire out. I love it.
All right.
Yeah, that's
Thanks
mine.
a bunch, Cal.
Cool. Thank you.
All right, we'll call it here.
Good luck for your exams, bro.
Bye. Good luck. Good luck to
Bye.
all students entering into the HSC.
Yeah. Hopefully this was helpful.